Well, ladies and gentlemen, Charu Sharma, you've probably seen this face like the poster boy when it comes to, commentating, presenting around cricket, and not just that, he's been in many leadership roles. He's been in the world of cricket in various capacities, and for people like us, he's been a role model in how. I have to say this to you, Charu sir. I have seen so many interviews in which first of all, I was always in awe of your voice. And then what happened is that I had the opportunity of, sort of sharing the stage with you at the Lanka Premier League. And I have to say this to you, a lot of people complimented me for my voice. And when you got on stage, I heard you for a bit. I was like, it's good if I just go back to my room and sleep.
Oh, Ridhima, come on. Anyway, listen, thank you very much for your wonderful and generous words. But
thank you. Well, the very first thing that I want to ask you, and let's dive straight into it, is because you've been there. You've done it all. So what is your take on the current state of Indian cricket? The IPL, the economics, the social media, the superstardom. What is your take on the current state of Indian cricket?
Well, it's like a whale, like an elephant. It's the biggest thing on earth as far as cricket's concerned because of our numbers, our volume, our commerce, and even our standard. Now, the fans can sometimes be a little overcritical or a little unthinking because nobody wins everything all the time. So I don't know where the fault lies, perhaps with the media, perhaps with just the hype that we create ourselves, where we expect, where we kind of, force feed the Indian cricket fan to expect to win every match. And that's the only problem we have. Because if you lose, say, the World Test Championship or lose some ICC tournament or lose some whatever it is, people say, oh, what a terrible show. We can't win everything. Even Australia, the mightiest team in the world, doesn't win everything. So we're in a good space. Sport is invariably linked to not only performance and standards, but also commerce. They're inextricably linked. They're together. And India has beaten the curve completely because commercially, Indian cricket is so strong that it will always remain on top at the highest level of the sport. Again, it will not win everything, but it'll be robust, it'll be strong. It's created so many opportunities for so many players to shine, to make a living. So all that is very good. All the associations are being given a lot of money by the board that's making a lot of money because the board is nothing else but a collection of associations. And they're all improving. They're getting more grounds, more facilities, more turf pitches, more players, more everything. Better conditions for everybody. So what's the problem here?
So the problem is that you did mention the fans. Now, and I would also like to add that the economics of Indian cricket is such as not just this, the sports stars, but also people like us, and it trickles down right to the very end, making a living off the sport, right? So first of all, the generation of employment is unbelievable. But if you look at the amount of emotion that is attached to it, the kind of reaction that comes on social media is a given. Forget about social media. The kind of reaction that happens to individuals like us watching the sport for so long is a given, right? Since 2001 to 2013, we won 4 ICC trophies. And after that, we've come close to winning one, but haven't been able to do so. What do you think is the reason for that?
Well, in the world of sport, you can put it down to many reasons. And cricket also is a sport which has many skill levels. I think our primary problem is that we don't have a steady enough supply, still, even though it's much better than the past, of quality fast bowler. Because our problem very often is not getting the runs. We give too many away. Now, our spinners are still world class, there's no doubt about it. Though some might argue that they're not quite as good as the past because we have an evening of the keel. We're on even keel where our fast bowlers also do a lot of hard work and take wickets, and so do our spinners. In the past, our spinners did a lot of the work. So that globally, when you compare it with, say, the top 2 or 3 nations, of course, we have to compare ourselves only with the top 3 or 4 nations. No point going down to number 10 or 12. We don't have a steady, spectacular fast bowling attack. And that at the highest level can hurt because that's the time when teams either break because the fast bowlers have broken the back of the top of the batting order of the opposition, or they've gotten a steady start. And then, of course, it's for the spinners to come in the middle overs and try and, do something special. Now, when you talk about ICC trophies, of course, there's white ball cricket and red ball cricket. So our discussion needs to be divided into 2 because they are, whatever you say, different forms of the game because they require very different skills and a very different kind of pressure in terms of the game.
Right. Now that you've divided the 2, let's pick one. Now we've had 2 successive losses at the finals of the WTC, after which, of course, there was a lot of pressure, a frenzy, and it was supposed to be done, some changes in the squad, which has happened. And It's a curtain raiser to that, I would say, with the India tour of West Indies, with the first test starting actually today. I don't know when the show will go on air, but it starts today. Are you happy with the calls that BCCI has made? If you look at the youngsters who've gotten the opportunity and with Chiteshwar Pujara and experience missing out.
Yeah, so I've always said, I'll quote myself again, that you pay me any kind of money, I don't ever want to be a selector and I don't ever want to be an umpire. Why? because you can never get it 100% right. Now, we keep blaming selectors about when people fail, we say, why did you take them? When people succeed, we don't say, oh, why did you take them? We say, okay, great, thank you. So there's no success formula here. I mean, there's no guarantee. Who's to guarantee that Yashasvi Jaiswal, who's going to likely to open with Rohit Sharma a little later today, is going to score 100 on debut? I mean, he might get out third ball because of nerves. And people are going to say, oh, why did you have to get him here? A youngster, you should have waited. And of course, when they don't get him, people, why don't you get him? He's a youngster. He's, he's ready and hungry. So I do think, I'm not against criticism and neither am I so neutral that I say, oh, it doesn't matter who plays, who doesn't. I just think it's impossible to get it right. So what works. What doesn't, people say, Arey, ye kya kiya? So, people are just very rough on the concept of selectors because you can't ever get it all right. To answer your question, otherwise, yes, I'm always glad when hungry youngsters are blooded at the right time, at the optimum time. What is that? Well, generally speaking, for bowlers, especially faster bowlers, it's nice to have bowling conditions which are generally outside of India. So when faster bowlers make their debut or are blooded overseas, they almost invariably do well. When batsmen are blooded overseas, say in England, you could have a horror series, 2, 4, 10, 13, 0. And people say, see, he's not good enough. Well, those are tough conditions. We don't play in, say, English conditions every day. They're not a condition. So the reverse is true. The batsmen are blooded in India, given a debut, they might get 50, 80, 112, and people say, wow, see, we always told you so. Same batsman goes overseas, doesn't do well, a bit of a problem. You blood a fast bowler in India, people say, kya, kuch bhi nahi kiya isne, because conditions are not easy for fast bowlers. So there's a little bit of luck involved here as well. I'd still like to say that India can churn out 40, taking a number, you may say 30, absolutely world-class players. How long do we stick with them? Because not everybody succeeds every day is the question. And Australia, for instance, even England, has this rotation policy. Whether you score 100 or not or do really well, we're happy to replace you for a couple of test matches. Essentially, that's not too bad. Although people say don't ever change a winning side, because it keeps everybody hungry. You play, say, 4 or 5 test matches, if you're talking about red ball now, and because there's such a big fight for so many spaces, if you don't do too well, you don't get, say, 250s in 7, 8 innings, you should be told, hey, listen, you're back of the line. Because there are 4 other people fighting for that spot. And so everybody remains hungry. And that's not such a bad way to go.
I have to say, you're speaking exactly like a man in a leadership position. Now, I'm going to ask you a question as a fan. What are you looking forward to the most in the West Indies tour? Because you've got a certain Yashasvi Jaiswal, and with the way he's been performing in the IPL, I'm pretty sure the guy is going to have a lot of pressure because everybody will be looking forward to that debut. We spoke about the pace attack. We're talking about probably Siraj. We're talking about Ranadkar. We're talking about between Mukesh Kumar and Navdeep Saini. What are you looking forward to?
There's also Shardul, let's not forget.
Yes.
I think, yeah. So I'm looking forward to the new people doing well. When you're given opportunities, easy to say. But the key is to grab it with both hands. I think even the youngsters these days are so heavily exposed to top-level cricket that they don't go in, say, 20 years ago, a youngster would go in with a very high degree of nervous tension. Oh my God, I've been given a cap now, I've been given a debut opportunity. Oh my God, how's it going to work out? Especially in overseas conditions. Now they're all hard-boiled. They've been for many A tours, they've played with the best players, even if it's maybe short form cricket. So I don't think they're scared of anything anymore. And yes, any batsman, anytime, for the first maybe 10, 15 balls, there's some butterflies in the stomach. But beyond that, I hope the youngsters do well, because it would just go on to prove, which is a theory that goes up and down, that India does have a very big bench strength. And the health of any sport, and you talked about that earlier on, what about Indian cricket? The health of any sport is how deep does your sport or do your options go inside the country. I mean, in badminton, we have, say, 10 people who can do well at the international level. One guy doesn't, 5 don't, 5 do. So similarly in cricket, if the youngsters do well, it shows that the country's sport is in good health.
Right. We've seen that in, other sports across the world, especially in football, where they start grooming youngsters to, age 12. And I think that as a fan, I feel like that particular route, even if, we don't get results with that, at least there's some amendments made in the squad in a direction which at least the fans are rooting for. Okay, sir, but we're playing against West Indies, and now, first of all, before we get into the West Indies squad and how they perform here, the fact that West Indies is missing out on the World Cup as it's out in the qualification. You have been there, you've commentated there. This is a champion team, two-time champion team. How does it make you feel? As every Indian fan was a fan of the West Indies team as well. What are the memories that come to you, and what is your emotions with West Indies this time?
Well, for starters, as a bit of a coincidence, I'm wearing West Indian colours.
I know you're wearing a maroon.
Maroon.
Yeah.
Well, you talk about the two-time champions. That was back in 75, 79. It's a long time back.
Yeah.
It's a bit like saying, oh, India were, hockey champions of the Olympics in the 40s and 50s. I think, come on, it's a completely new era.
But we won a bronze.
Yeah, but that's, it's very, very far away, all these things.
Right.
Won a bronze. Where are we, 8-time champions and what have you, and so many times in a row. So I don't think any sports person or any sport should live in the past at all. I mean, fans and others love to live in past glory. But any sports person worth his or her salt will tell you, today is a new day. I begin on zero. Forget the history, forget the past, forget the reputation, whatever else we've done in the past. So I really think, let's stop this two-time world championship, ODI world champions thing, because it's very far. Since then, they've had some highs. Of course, in T20, they've won the World Cup twice and so on and so forth. So they're done really well. The women have won the World Cup. So we can't say they're completely rotten side. I mean, they've got lots of good things going for them. It's just that they've become a bit like, if I may say so, with due respect, like Pakistan, where one day they'll beat anybody, next day they'll lose to anybody. So that inconsistency is the bane of a good top-level sports person. Because if, for instance, Novak Djokovic won a title, lost first round, won a title, lost first round, you'd say, what kind of crazy things going on here? But he doesn't. He's pretty consistent. You can do a semi or a final or a win. So that's the problem in the West Indies. And why does that happen? Of course, is a long story. I don't know how much time you have, but we can get to it.
I have time. Don't worry.
You have a bit of time.
I'm actually wanting to read the West Indies story.
Yeah. Well, the usual lament is the fact that the West Indian sporting DNA is being maneuvered or lost to the American commercial sports, which are basketball and perhaps baseball a bit, not really. Athletics is something that a lot of the talented, physically fit West Indians are going in for to the US and trying to succeed there because it's just closer and they have a few role models which you can't argue against. So, but they have cricket role models as well. That argument is, I think, now old, that all the potential cricket stars are moving on to other sports, primarily in the US. Yeah. I think the problem still is, and one says this without too much fact, but more conjecture and feel, that the West Indian Cricket Board, with all due respect, is not being able to generate the same level of nationalistic flavor that is required for a team to do well. You do need to come together as a team. The whole concept of a team is not really too individualistic. You have to be together, you have to feel together, eat together, kind of be together and dream together and so on and so forth. And the West Indies, as you know, cricket is an aberration. Every other sport, they play as individual island nations. Only cricket. All these nations come together and play as the West Indies, which is, if you're not together really, if I'm from a different island, you're from a way different island somewhere. I'm not saying that there's any cultural difference or food difference or language difference or whatever, as in India, but still it's a completely different country. And yet, for cricket, you're supposed to come together, fly in from different islands and say, oh, now we're a team. You may argue that that was the same thing in the past. Yes, I think there are less options then. And now there are more commercial options happening. It's a twin-pronged problem. One, I don't think the West Indies Cricket Board is deeply committed to the commercial success of the West Indies. They're having problems. They're a small market. In the past, when all cricket was amateur, it didn't matter how rich or poor the board was, because you basically flew to one country or the other in the past, and you went in a ship and you played a series. There wasn't much money exchange, and you came back and you played really well or not. Now, everything is related to the money. And the West Indies is a very small market. They can't create the kind of money or commercial support that other major countries can. And I think they are there's a little frustration there, saying, well, we used to be so big, so good in the game, but why is it that we can't get commercial support? Because you're a very small economy. Right. So there are many other factors beyond cricket why the West Indies board is not being able to create the kind of wealth that can inspire them and the growth of cricket in the West Indies in general. Secondly, of course, is their somewhat cavalier attitude. I say that once again, I mean no disrespect, but the general West Indian attitude is very cavalier. Lots of fun, lots of, bonhomie and have a great time, camaraderie. All that was great when there was amateur cricket, because if you won, great. If you didn't, it's okay. Nobody kind of skewered you. Now, there's so much commercial opportunities in cricket that cavalier attitude, sometimes is great for perhaps being friends and stuff. Not great for a team to come together and win. They're still kind of moving in slightly different directions. The professionalism, good word there. I think the professionalism of play is still missing the West Indies. They probably still enjoy the cricket even more than all the other professional cricketers of many other nations because they had such a great time. But it doesn't help them win and doesn't help them be consistent. So, and the concept of professionalism really is one word that is very important, and Saina Nehwal actually, brought my attention to it many years ago. So I use it pretty regularly, and I thank her for that, is sacrifice. And I say that in many of the lectures that I am invited for, that what does it really mean to try and succeed at the highest level? Sacrifice of everything. You can't live a normal life. You can't just hang around with the movies. You can't eat what you want. You can't do whatever you want. You have to sleep. You have to eat now. You have to practice now. So all that, I think, is something that the West Indies are not following as much as other nations who are a little more consistent at the top.
Perfect. I think I learned something new here. Professionalism is actually sacrifice at the highest level. Okay, now just to tell everybody, my eyes are getting teary, not because West Indies is not a part of the World Cup anymore, it's because something went in the eye. But yes, as a fan, I do feel for West Indies. Now, if I had to ask you, so what is your finest memory of watching West Indies play?
Well, some of the early memories, I think it was the 76 tour or whatever. I was in Delhi, or West Indies tour to India. And the first time I saw, Lloyd and Greenwich and Haynes and even Richards, who was then, I think, still pretty young. And they were at the Ambedkar Stadium in the DD, well, now, the Firozshah Kotla. And the Ambedkar is next door. There are two bowls together, right? One is Firozshah Kotla, and across the wall, there's another stadium, which is the football stadium. If I'm not mistaken, Richards or somebody went bang, and the ball went to the football stadium. I said, what kind of people are these? They were very, very hard hitting. Yeah. They had a lot of, you could see the fun.
Yeah.
Then too, as I told you, they always enjoyed their cricket more than other nations seemed to. They were always laughing and joking and backslapping each other. And I remember Lloyd, particularly in the slip cordon, right? He used to say it first or whatever. And when they bowled the West Indies, every third ball when, there was a nick. I mean, because the batsmen were terrified. And the number of catches that they took in the slips is not as memorable as the number of catches they actually dropped. Because, every once in a while, the ball get a nick because the batsman kind of, and they drop a catch, knowing that it's going to come again anyway. Yeah. And, who's going to laugh now? People kind of look like this and, oh my God, I dropped the catch. But I said, well, that's kind of, interesting. I mean, they're not really bothered about the fact that they're dropping so many catches, probably because many more will come anyway. But it just showed a kind of attitude that they weren't really upset with each other. They weren't kind of, here, especially certain kinds of people kind of go, and they look and there are all sorts of words exchanged when somebody misses a catch or whatever, or misfields. But I enjoyed the freedom with which they seemed to enjoy the cricket. And that stayed a very abiding memory.
But if you just see it from a very different lens and perspective, just the fact that they are the way they are, it just takes off so much mental pressure. I think if a slight tweak is done, this particular attitude can actually go a long way in professional sports.
Yeah, there's always a blend of things, Ridhima. So, when you go sort of overboard on any one side, maybe it doesn't work so much because, like in life, the middle path is probably what you want. You want to have a lot of fun playing together as a team. And by the way, the Indian team now is far more relaxed than it was in the past.
Yeah.
So now there's a lot more joking. They're professionals, but they kind of kid around a lot, and it's nice to have young blood. And even in India, I think the culture has changed. Earlier it was, oh, good morning, sir, Mr. Sir. Now it's like, ha, 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 and everybody meets. And, there's less of a gap between the seniors and the juniors. And it's not like, oh, good morning, sir, can I come and sit next to you now? He's like, hi, hello, how is it going? So I'm glad that there's a little bit of lightening up on that front in the Indian team as well. But yeah, so if you can retain a lot of fun. And so what's the key here? That, the fear of failure. I don't think the West Indies have that. But that has to be combined with the will to win. And everything is easier said than done. And us commentators, what can I say? We lead the way in easier said than done, because our job is to speak. But the combination of the will to win, with when to be really serious, when to really focus, when to say, okay, now or never. And how do we combine those sort of attitudes with, hey, let's also enjoy ourselves. And you know how it is when the fans are so rough that sometimes even commentators, certainly fans, are very rough. When somebody, doesn't do too well or drops a catch or whatever and smiles, people say, oh my God, he doesn't feel anything. You should be embarrassed. Why is he still smiling? Or when teams lose and they're shaking hands and they're smiling, and people say, see, they don't really care. They're smiling after a loss. What do you want them to do? Cut their heads off and put it on a platter or what? So So
Yeah, I know.
anyway, sports is on one hand very, very simple, elementary, but there are complications here of the mental end of it, the psychological end of it, the physical end of it, and so on and so forth. And not everybody understands all these angles. So that's why what happens is the sports persons tend to kind of seclude themselves and put themselves in a little ivory tower, because people say all sorts of things. And now, of course, there's social media. So everybody's letting crazy steam out. And obviously the players are going to say, well, we don't care what anybody says, because if they start caring, I mean, they won't be able to get out of bed.
Yeah. No, but I'm pretty sure, I think the time has come for West Indies to take some strong steps. And I think the legends of the game, if you've seen their comments also on, social media, especially Twitter, I think they are all very upset about the fact of a team like West Indies.
Yeah. It's easy to criticize. It's easy to criticize. And it's easy to say, oh, as a former West Indian cricketer, I'm so upset. But what do you want to do about it? I mean, the West Indies are also chopping and changing like mad now. I was there doing the West Indies UAE series. They had some new blood in. A couple of them did well. Alec Athanasi did really well, and a couple of others. So they'll get this talent coming through. But there's this confusion still in the West Indies about why can't we make as much money as somebody else? And we're playing this because we've chosen not to go to the US or any other option. We're playing cricket, so we want to be properly compensated. But there isn't that much money in the West Indian cricket. So they're saying, we're professionals and we want to do as well as other sports persons in other fields. Why are we not getting the same commercial revenue? And you might say that's such a mercenary attitude, but come on, hey, they don't have 4 avenues of earning. This is it. They play cricket and they have to be compensated well, or in their minds, as well as many other cricketers around the world. But they're not, because they don't have that kind of commercial power in the West Indies. So they're still torn between, a lot of people talking about this, Ridhima, about the fact that the West Indians are all sort of T20, mercenaries. What do you do? I mean, I've got a short shelf life. I've got 5, 7, 8 years. I've got to make as much money as I can. And then what? I really don't have much else to do. So let's not be, petty about the fact that cricketers want to make money or want to be T20 mercenaries, because if there's money to be going around somewhere, that's what you're playing the game for. In India, we have it's a habit that I think gradually will reduce, of saying, oh, I want to play for country, oh, about your flag and America. On one hand, they're saying that. On the other hand, they're always saying, but where's the money? Humko paisa nahi mila, humko award nahi mila, reward nahi mila. So listen, let's be clear. If you're playing, if you're giving your life for something, if you're a doctor, for heaven's sake, you want to be compensated. If you're a computer specialist, you want to be compensated. If you're whatever else, I don't know, if you're selling phones, you don't sell it free. You want money for it. So same way, if you're selling your sporting ability, you want to be compensated for it. And the better the compensation, that's where people will gravitate. People change jobs for compensation, yes or no? So that's why cricketers do that. And the West Indies take it to a new level, because at home they don't really have very good commercial option.
Brilliant. I think that's a great perspective, because when we call it a career, my career is of that of a cricketer, and all of us have careers. There's a reason why we have a career. We want to be compensated. Now, talking about the India tour of West Indies, there are a couple of predictions that I'd like to take from you. The prediction goes like this. Now, which record of the 3 do you think is going to be broken first? There are 3 records that we will look forward to. Number 1 is that India has not lost to West Indies in a test series in 21 years. Number 2 is Ashwin is 3 wickets away from 700 international wickets. Number 3 is Virat Kohli to regain his 50 average in test cricket. He needs 421 runs in 4 innings to regain his 50 average in test cricket. Which of the 3 do you
India, okay, so number 1, India are not going to lose this test series.
Okay.
So that record will continue. Okay. Ashwin, if he's to play, I hope he plays, because he's had, he's been up and down in terms of selection, will definitely get to 700, 100%.
Right.
And for Kohli, it's very tough to get 400 odd in 4 innings, to get the average above 50. Tough.
All right. So you made your prediction. Ashwin plays, takes those 3 wickets, 700 international. Now coming to the other part, the other format. We spoke about Test. Let's go to ODI. Not just in this series, but leading up to this series is a big year for India, because the ODI World Cup is happening in India. Now we've been waiting for it. We've been talking about it. We're excited about it. We've bought some tickets. We're looking forward to work for it. Everything is happening.
Oh, you got some tickets, please.
No,
send me a ticket or 2 here.
I have none, sir. I was hoping to ask some from you. None. But India's chances, where do you see, how deep do you see India getting into the World Cup? What are your predictions?
Well, as good a chance as any other time in the last 20 years. Because once again, they are playing at home. Conditions do matter. It's an ODI, so it's not a bang, bang, bang T20 where anything can happen. There's a lot more thinking, some time to strategize, some time to change tactics. Our primary problem in being able to get that trophy is the fact that I have said earlier as well, that I don't know if Bumrah is going to recover or not. Our pace bowling attack is not the best in the world. And that often means that other teams get off to a very good start and or they go to a very good finish because of the death over. And we're always giving too many runs away. And in India, of course, it's all about runs. It's not so much about wickets or not so much about bowlers, sadly. Once again, it's the usual suspects. I mean, we will face a lot of opposition or a lot of problem from England, who play a very good brand of white ball cricket now. We'll face a lot of problems from Australia, who are, their ruthlessness and their will to win is just second to none on this earth. They're very, very strong mentally. The ruthlessness of crushing is tough to battle. And there are a couple of outliers as always. I mean, New Zealand will always remain an outlier and a couple of the countries. So it's not easy.
And yet make it to the finals somehow.
So once again, I keep telling people and fans and whatever else on Twitter and this, that, and the other, by what yardstick are we expecting to win every match, every time? It doesn't happen. So if we lose, we get to the final four, say in semi-finals, that's a bloody good result with four best teams in the world. Of course, there are not too many other playing. But I think what I'd like to see is India crushing opposition that is of a lower level. I mean, we can't, for instance, I don't know which group we're going to be, etc. But we can't force, say, the Dutch or a couple of the teams that are not that good. We can't be allowing them. We should be crushing. That killer factor, killer instinct. I'd like to see more of. Because to the teams that we lose. But the teams that we win against, we should win big and handsome to show that, we're a strong force. If those are weak matches for India and India barely squeak through with 2 wickets or, 20 runs, that would be a shame because it would show that our standards are lowering. Of course, their standards need to be improving as well. Great that the Dutch are in. Terrible that the West Indies is not in. But, it's nice to... And imagine the Dutch against the West Indies chasing 370. It's ridiculous.
It's crazy.
Anyway.
Yeah, but what a match.
Yeah.
All right. So, your prediction that even if we make it to the semi-finals, it's a great result. And...
it's a fair result because... we're not like 10-time champions or whatever who will once again want to become champions. I mean, we win only once in a while. So let's not sit here and say, oh, we're the best in the world. We're not. We're in the top 4, for sure. And if we don't get in the top 4, that's a bad result. Top 4, neutral result, good result, average result, whatever. Final, very good result. A victory, well, that's the ultimate.
I'm going from this to that. Yeah. But
okay, at this point of time, I'll give India a 33% chance of winning.
Oh, okay.
I'm quantifying it, whatever that means.
Yeah, lovely. One last question before I let you go. How do you see, we don't have West Indies in the World Cup now. How do you see ICC's decision to have 10 teams in a World Cup? And why not open the game to more international teams?
Well, what's happening, Ridhima, is that they are opening the game in the most popular format right now. The T20 World has more teams because that's where most of the newer nations are putting all their strength and their effort and energy in. Like, say, Afghanistan, for instance. And many other nations. And also, of course, the shortest format bridges the gap between standards most. So T20, between a team that's ranked 1 and say 9, 9 could have a pretty good chance. But in a one-day, that difference will show. In a test match, that difference will show big time. So the difference in standards is compressed in the shorter form of the game. And that's why, newer nations are likely to cause upsets almost all the time. And that's where the ICC is saying, okay, let's have more nations. Also because it's a shorter format. You can have 2 matches a day. You can have, television can absorb more matches during the day and so on and so forth. In an ODI format, during one day, you show 1 match on a television channel. So, if you take more nations and I don't know what you'll have to split the format into small groups and things like that and make it kind of, fiddle with the format. I'm all for more teams. Frankly, my vote goes for more teams. But I also realize that, we don't have that kind of time frame. We need a month and a half to have a bigger tournament when the more teams come in. And of course, they're traveling all over the place. You need to give them sufficient rest. And it's a complicated scenario. And therefore, the ODI, I think they'll find it very difficult to increase the number of teams because of the amount of time, the window required is not likely to happen, easily. And also because the gap in standards, as I mentioned, is more visible in a longer format. In an ODI World Cup, you'll find, say, an India versus a lower ranked team, let's not take names, you might have a really dull match, 148 all out, and then India gets to 149 in, 22 overs. I mean, so who wants to see that differential? In T20, that differential is less likely because of the compression.
Yeah, that explains it. Well, thank you so much, Charu. Thanks a lot. I think we covered both formats. Here's wishing Team India all the best for the India tour.
Always. Despite my shirt, always.
And yes, looking forward to working with you very soon. And thank you once again for doing this. Hopefully, you'll join us again for other sports too. Here's hoping. But
hey, I'm multi-sport. That's who I am. So, you get in touch, we do this.
Done. Do you have an advice? There's so many young anchors who are coming in who wanting to actually become like you, been a role model for so many. Do you have an advice for young anchors?
Yeah, not like me, no. But I mean, if you don't mind, I certainly would like to give my standard formula for doing well in the world of presenting and or commentating. And if you have 100 units, I've said this 1,000 times, but now it's on your camera, your program. If you have 100 units that can make up perfection, 50 of those units need to belong to knowledge of the subject. Only 50, not more, but that's a lot. Half. So if you are presenting garment fair, fashion something, or a computer, conference, then you need to have massive in-depth knowledge of that subject. Correct. And so we do sport, and each sport, you need to really work hard at understanding the nuances, the subtleties, the depth of that subject, in our case sport. So that's 50. People can get to maybe 35 on 50, maybe 40 on 50. Some people are 20 on 50, so and so forth. Secondly, another 45 units, which will of course make the total 95. You can imagine 95 or 100 is not bad, but who can get there? Very few. So 45 units belong to the language, because whatever you know, you have to communicate. How do you communicate? Through language. And language is a major problem, particularly for people in our part of the world, because we're multilingual. We speak Hindi, we speak English, we speak another local language of this or that, the other, and we think in multiple languages as well. Now, it's all very well to say that, in the modern commentary area or in the modern presentation, bilingual is good and you can have a little tapori talk and this. I don't know. That's not my era. So if you have a certain purity of the language, if you have depth of the language, if you have terrific vocabulary, whether it's Oriya or whether it's Kashmiri or whether it's English or whichever language you're commentating in or presenting, the depth of the language comes through, and people don't work hard enough at it. So people, when they are in our line of work, are 10 on 45, 15 on 40. That's not good enough. You have to work really hard on your language to be able to have the depth and the width of putting the same thing in 25 different ways at the drop of a hat without thinking and converting and so that it takes you to 95. And as you can imagine, language is a big barrier for a lot of people. The sophistication of language, not just language, because there are many things in a language. Apart from there's pronunciation, just the volume of words that and then the subtleties of the language. And the other 5 are on. I think people give a lot of attention to the other 5, forgetting that 95, a much bigger portion of being a good commentator or being in our line of work, is already over. But the other 5 has to do with all the little things as far as I'm concerned. Are you presentable? Are you looking after yourself well? Are you, are you taking care of camera angles? Or do you have a good voice or not? And do you have a sense of humor or not? And are you, pleasant and personable? And all the rest of the wonderful things. All the anchors like to kind of, show those best sides, which is fine. But that's 5 out of 100. If you don't have enough knowledge of the subject that you're talking about, people will find you out very soon. If you don't have the kind of control that you need on the language that you're speaking and communicating in, people will find out very quickly, or you'll be found out very quickly. So I think the wood is lost for the trees there, where people focus on all sorts of other visual and audio kind of matters, but forget that if you essentially have terrific knowledge of the subject and great command of the language that you're speaking in, the job is done. And yes, it matters how smart are you and what are you wearing and what's going on. But eventually, people need to listen to you and understand you and absorb what you're saying. I think unless they put you on mute and just keep admiring, what you're wearing so that's my formula. As much as you can learn about the sport that you're speaking of in our line of work, or you could be presenting something else, learn more, know more. And of course, language is like an ocean. Nobody, to my mind, can even get to 22 and a half out of 40. There's so much of it. Look at the kind of vocabulary that most languages have. And so I feel, I don't want to be critical, but a lot of people just keep using the same cliches, same words, same phrases, so you got to use different words. And how does that happen? Deliberately. You have to work hard at the language, and you have to speak, maybe in front of a mirror or whatever else, and practice. Because unless you practice and speak, you don't know whether you can or not. Right. You think you can, but you have to prove to yourself and everybody else that you can. So that's the formula of doing well in our world. And of course, we're all students, because we have to keep learning.
Thank you so much.
You're
It's been really an honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right.
Okay.